Hello and welcome to episode 121 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast where two friends stopped arguing about movies and started working through them together. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. We're continuing our look back at 2023, but this time, instead of rewatching something from last year, we're catching up on a movie we've been meaning to watch, American Fiction, the Oscar-winning comedic drama from writer and first-time director Cord Jefferson. As fans of novelist Percival Everett, who wrote Erasure, the novel American Fiction is based on, we were excited to watch this as soon as we heard about it, so we're not exactly sure what took us so long.
American Fiction is the type of movie that doesn't get made very often anymore. Its $10 million budget was noted in Cord Jefferson's Oscar acceptance speech after winning the award for Best Adapted Screenplay, when he implored studios to stop making $200 million movies and instead make 20 $10 million movies. At the box office, American Fiction doubled its budget and was a huge hit with critics. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It ultimately won Best Adapted Screenplay in a bit of an upset over Oppenheimer.
But does American Fiction's award-winning unwillingness to be subtle connect with audiences?
Or is it wearing its inability to relate to people like a badge of honor? Keep listening.
Any news?
Patrick at Echo is passing, but who fucking cares?
He's an old alcoholic.
What is that, 9 now?
He said, "This book is finely crafted with fully developed characters and rich language, but one is lost to understand what this reworking of Aeschylus's The Persians has to do with the African-American experience."
There it is. There it is.
They want a black book.
They have a black book. I'm black, and it's my book.
You know what I mean.
You mean they want me to write about a cop killing some teenager or a single mom in Dorchester raising 5 kids?
Dorchester's pretty white now. But yes.
Jesus Christ. You know, I don't even really believe in race.
Yeah, the problem is that everyone else does.
Well, that was Felonious Monk Ellison talking to his agent Arthur about why his career has stalled.
And that's a pretty early scene in fact, I think it's one of the first scenes in the movie.
Scenes, yeah.
So it really just kind of lays out the groundwork for what's to come, and what's to come is gets a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it does. We mentioned in the intro that this is based on a book called Erasure by Percival Everett, which we both read. You read it very recently.
Yeah. I'll get into that a little bit more probably in our conversation, but I like having a good excuse to read a Percival Everett book. I more recently had gotten into him off of your recommendation, actually. And so this was a book I hadn't read and a movie I had not seen. It's a little kind of crazy that it's taken us this long to catch up with it.
Yeah. But I to talk about Percival Everett again for a second, I recommend him to everybody. And I don't think anybody I've recommended him to who has read him has regretted it. In fact, I think almost everybody I recommend him to and they end up reading, they text me when they're halfway through whatever the first book is they've read, because he's just astounding.
Yes, right.
He's just that striking. And he's written
funny.
a ton. Unbelievably funny.
So
in a
funny.
way that you never thought.
Exactly.
And I think this movie does that too. We'll definitely get to that. So if you haven't read Percival Everett, he has something like 30 or 40 books out there.
He's been writing for a heck of a long time.
Well, he has and he hasn't. Like, he just writes very prolifically. And one of my favorite things about this movie is that more libraries started stocking more Percival Everett books.
I do think, this is a movie podcast, but the floor is yours, Ryan, if you would like to kind of explain to our audience, like, what is it about Percival Everett that is kind of great?
He is, first of all, like we said, unbelievably funny. An extremely unique voice. But I would sort of say, if you like Kurt Vonnegut,
I think that was a great comparison you gave to me.
Percival Everett. Mm-hmm. And not to compare them, not to say one is better than the other, but like, he's doing his own thing, where Kurt Vonnegut could kind of illuminate a truth that's a little bit beautiful. Percival Everett, I think, can illuminate a truth that's a little bit ugly.
Yes, right.
In a way that for some reason you're laughing.
It's a very dark humor.
Very dark humor. And I have not read a book of his that is not great.
Yeah.
So there's so much more we could say about Percival Everett. He is, for some reason, went so long under my radar, and I think just generally under the radar.
It was totally under my radar for sure. All right, well, get to it, everyone.
Yeah, let's jump into talking about American fiction. Was this movie on your radar before it was released? Like, did you hear about it? Had you read any Percival Everett? So was it like something you would think about?
Not really. I don't even remember seeing a trailer for this at all. I think that as this movie was coming out, that's when I was just starting to get into Percival Everett a little bit. But I didn't even really realize until someone had pointed out to me that this was based on one of his novels. I don't remember who pointed that out to me. But no, I guess to answer your question, this was not a movie that was on my radar until it was, maybe even until it was like nominated. It's hard for me to remember exactly, but it was certainly not one that I was seeking out, for instance, because I was a Percival Everett fan. I mean, this is Cord Jefferson's first movie, so I didn't have that to go off of.
Right. And I didn't, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff apparently that Cord Jefferson wrote. He was the writer on The Good Place and Watchmen, Station 11.
But even when it came to like year-end lists, like I listened to the Film Spotting podcast, I don't think it really got mentioned a whole lot in their year-end roundups. And it was on a lot of year-end lists, but I really feel like it was the Oscar nominations that kind of put it a little bit more on my radar than anything. Yeah. How about for you?
Oh, I heard that they were adapting one of Everett's novels and was a little bit surprised it was Erasure first, not The Trees, because that was kind of like, the big breakout hit 30 years into his career.
As weird as The Trees is, it on surface would be easier to adapt.
I think so too. It's a mystery. It's a mystery novel. It's fairly straightforward in execution. The concept is just what's insane.
Compared to this, where it's just like it's about a writer, it's about writing and books, and it's just like that seems like from a filmmaking standpoint, it wouldn't be as easy.
A lot of it's in Monk's head.
Yeah.
Also in the book, when Monk submits My Pathology, the book just gives you those chapters.
You read it. And you read My Pathology.
You read My Pathology, and it's a bad book.
It's 10 chapters. They're small, they're short.
Yeah.
But you're with it for a while.
Yeah. He makes you read that book.
You read the whole book.
And so I was kind of curious as to what they would do with that.
Yeah, right.
And we can definitely talk about how they changed it, because the focus of the movie feels very different from the focus of the book.
Yes.
But yeah, I was excited. I didn't have any idea about Cord Jefferson or anything, but just like you, Jeffrey Wright, Sterling K. Brown, Eric Alexander, like great cast. I was excited, and then I didn't see it until like a year after it came out.
I mean, you got to give us a little bit of grace here, because 2023 was just such a year.
Yeah.
There were so many amazing movies, and some of them we're still catching up with.
Yeah.
So,
and my wife had a baby.
Well, there's that.
So
yeah,
things were tough.
So should we get into like, I mean, we don't have previous viewings. So,
right.
I mean, I guess let's just baseline. What were your thoughts now seeing the movie?
Baseline, I liked it. I really liked it. It's not a very showy movie, I don't think. I think it handled the humor really well. It was interesting that the focus shifted more to Monk's relationship with his family than his relationship with the literary world at large. But as far as like kind of handling the story, I think it made for probably an easier movie to watch. But generally speaking, yeah, I liked it, and I think I'm sitting at like 4 stars with it.
Okay, all right. That's a good rating.
Yeah. What about you?
So this is a movie, we don't do this, I don't know if we've ever really done this, where we've talked about the book, and how it stacks up against the movie. I decided to read the book before watching the movie, but like right before. So like I just read the book.
It's been a couple of years since.
And I do feel like this makes sense to read this book for this conversation for a couple reasons, one of which is that it won Best Adapted Screenplay. So that's worth talking about, is what was that adaptation? How did it actually pull it off? And then also it's a movie and a book about writing and the book world. And so I was just curious to know, like, how is it going to be different when you're reading a book about books versus a movie about books?
Yeah.
The problem with doing that, though, is that it became very hard for me to not think about the book constantly while watching it. Generally speaking, I think we would both agree, when you're doing an adaptation, you're talking about a movie versus a book, like you got to take the movie on its own terms.
Sure.
And there's always that conversation of like, the book's always better. But I have always been of the mind of, well, often they're just doing two very different things. But with that said, so just getting to the point, I didn't like a lot of the changes that were made from the book to the movie. And I don't mean to compare it too hardly, other than to say that, like, I'm a little surprised actually that like I personally don't know if this was a very good adaptation of the book. I did find it funny, but by the time it got to the end and I was just reflecting on it, I feel a little disappointed in the movie. I think it's still worth watching. Yeah. I think there's still parts of it that I thought were really good. So just before we dig too deep into it, I've been sitting at like a 3-star on this one.
Okay.
Which is like, I'm a little ambivalent about it.
Okay.
I'm not mad that it was in the Oscars running or anything like that. I mean, I think it had enough going for it that it was definitely deserving to be in the conversation. Uh-huh. It's just that I don't think this would have made one of my favorite movies of the year last year. But anyways, sure. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So maybe there are some things we can agree on that are really working for this movie.
Okay. Well, I guess, what do you think is working?
Well, I think it's a great cast. So Jeffrey Wright, I think he is really well cast as Monk because I think he really nails the sort of exhaustion.
Yes.
Jeffrey Wright is just very good at showing his annoyance with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that I think was working. I like where it did lean into what the book was doing.
Right.
What I disliked was where I felt like it pulled a few punches.
I agree.
Also, like, I actually like a lot of the family drama stuff in this when it kind of focuses more on just him with his, his mother and Lorraine and his brother and Lisa at the beginning, his sister.
Yeah.
But then there are areas where it strayed from the book. That's fine. Sure. I don't have a problem with that. But I actually feel like it strayed from the book in ways where I'm scratching my head and I'm like, I don't get the point of why they strayed in certain ways.
Yeah.
I also don't want to get into spoilers of the book in case someone decides they want to read it.
Yeah.
But I will say, well, anyways, why don't I just kind of leave it at that before, and I'll get into more detail on that, but I do kind of want to hear what you think is working for you in this movie.
So as you were talking, I found myself agreeing with you that there is an edge and an abrasiveness to the book that the movie shaves off. There are ways that they rein in some of Everett's swinging for the fences. Like in the book, when Monk meets with white people as Sagar Lee, he puts on like a costume. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said, like, visually, this looks unbelievable. Like, this is ridiculous. Sure. But I think that's part of the point that the book is trying to make. Like, you can't caricaturize black people too far for white audiences. There are ways that I think the movie was maybe trying to be palatable that the book didn't care about.
I will agree 100%, but I also feel like it's a lesser movie because of that.
I agree too.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. In both the movie and the book, Monk's father commits suicide. But the book does a lot more talking about the dynamic between each of the siblings, and the father. The movie doesn't really seem that concerned with the father, but there's a richness in understanding that deeper that's in the book. Like the book even goes and he has memories of times with his father. His father talks to him about why he's different and why you don't get any of that in the movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's fine. If you felt like the movie was bloated and you didn't want to add that, then why even make the father someone who committed suicide? What's the point? Who cares? Like, just make it so his father passed away. Like,
dead, yeah.
And then they do an almost opposite thing with Lisa, which is Tracy Ellis Ross's character at the beginning. They don't really give the relationship between him and Lisa enough time to really understand that relationship at all.
Right.
To where I'm like, why did you even need it?
Yeah.
Like, just take it out. Like, this is where I'm kind of like, I'm a little surprised at one adapted screenplay because I'm like, your actual adaptations, I don't think do better for the characters. I do understand that some of the adaptation is just to kind of make the movie work as a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a challenge to make this book into a movie.
Yeah.
But I just find I find some of the choices that were made in the adaptation a little weird. I don't feel like I understand what they're serving.
Yeah.
You know?
Like I said, it's been a while since I've read Erasure, so I think the points you're making are valid, and I'm seeing what you're saying. I don't need to have my 4 stars stand or anything like at all, because as you're talking, I think as its own movie,
Sure,
I think it works.
And maybe you can say that more than I can because of that distance
it's been a while.
between. Yeah,
but I don't feel like it marries or reconciles the family drama with the kind of fight against societal racism and ideas of it that Monk is. Like they're very separate things.
In the movie.
Yeah, in the movie. Because in the movie he's got his family thing and then he's got the writing thing. And even story-wise, there's no need for them to mix. And they don't at all. And there are elements that it's like the movie doesn't do anything with, but I think need to be dealt with, like the character of Lorraine, who like is sort of like a mammy sort of character, but it just goes by without notice. It's just nothing's made of it. And another sort of, I think, caricature is Sterling K. Brown's character. Without the depth of everything that's involved in his character in the book, he's like a gay man who does cocaine and has like boy toys around.
Sure, yeah. And then the other critique I kind of have with the adaptation is my pathology.
Yeah.
Like,
it kind of disappears.
It's like one scene.
Yeah.
And that one scene is nowhere near as biting as what Percival Everett does. Nowhere near.
What do I say now?
I think now will come some sort of, dumb melodramatic sob story where you highlight your broken interiority. Something like, I don't know,
I hates this man. I hates my mama, and I hates myself. I'm seeing my face in his. I see the ape that all them stupid girls were afraid of, yeah. I can see my long arms hanging down. And I see eyes that don't care what happens tomorrow.
Okay, but this is the crux of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the crux of the movie is, look at this crap I'm putting out, and look at how reductive it is to black people.
Right.
But like, I don't think people watching the movie are really getting the depth of what Percival Everett says about that thing in the book by making you read 10 chapters of it. And also, I'm not saying he had to do it longer.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's things that happen in my pathology in the book that are like, oh, this is awful.
Mm-hmm. He shaves the edges, right?
Exactly. And I don't think you're going to watch the little scene of my pathology and get offended enough.
I was thinking when he's writing my pathology in the movie and, it's kind of playing out in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like a serviceable way, a good way, to kind of show it. But I couldn't help, like, even as I was feeling fine about it, I couldn't help but thinking, like, it would have been just even a little bit gutsier to shoot it in the style of like Precious or like suddenly change movie styles so that you can be like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, this is a construct. This is something that is absolutely like, there's a lot of shorthand that happens in movies to portray these things.
Right. And I think that effect is like hinted at when on the TV that Monk is in the room.
Part was great.
They kind of show like
the Black History Month,
Black story, like Black voices,
story,
whatever, and it was
yeah.
all like Black suffering and oppression.
Yeah, but it was real stuff.
Right, those were all real movies.
Yeah.
Right, that's maybe the gutsiest they got.
It is. Now, one thing I will say in the movie's favor that I appreciate, and it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but
well, listen, I said I really like this movie, and then
well, I will say that in one way, like Cord Jefferson kind of puts his money where his mouth is by actually making the family stuff and the stuff at the beach house especially, it is an example of a black story that didn't have to be a black story.
Yeah.
Like, this is a movie that I would be used to seeing a rich white family having these
Exactly.
dramas. And that's the point.
For sure.
And I think that's a big point that the movie actually does a better job of drawing out than maybe the book does, that this family story is just as important as the literary aspect.
I think this is in keeping with the book too, but the movie might be doing it a little bit stronger. Not stronger like better, but just more overtly, is not just offering a critique, but also offering an alternative.
Yes. And where I'm contradicting myself is I just got done saying, but it didn't actually do a very good job with some of these characters, but it does do a good job with some of it.
Yes. And I was just about to say, well, if Cord Jefferson wanted to offer the alternative, he could have just made the family drama.
Sure.
But I think, to the book's point, the movie's point, that's not going to get Oscar nominated. That's not going to get seen.
You're right.
This movie had to have the racial criticism lens, I think, to get the Oscar nomination, to double its budget at the box office.
Absolutely.
Not to downplay or to say that its racial lens isn't in any way like My Pathology or We's Lives in the Ghetto sort of thing. But I just think it's true that the people kind of came for the racial perspective and got the alternative story.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that the movie does succeed at some of the duality of it all, because Monk is so certain that the oppression story is not the black story. But without going too far into it, he has that conversation with Issa Rae's character where she's sort of like, but it is.
Yeah.
I researched. A lot of what I put in there was quotes.
Maybe you've been up in your ivory tower of academia for so long, you've forgotten that some people's lives are hard.
Your life? You went to an exclusive bohemian college. You had a job at a fancy publishing house in New York.
So what? I don't need to write about my life. I write about what interests people.
Well, you write what interests white publishers fiending black trauma porn.
They're the one buying the manuscripts. Is it bad to cater to their tastes?
If you're okay feeding people's base desires for profit.
I'm okay with giving the market what it wants.
That's how drug dealers excuse themselves.
And I think drugs should be legal.
But you're not fed up with it. Black people in poverty, black people rapping, black people as slaves, black people murdered by the police, whole soaring narratives about black folks in dire circumstances who still manage to maintain their dignity before they die. I mean, I'm not saying these things aren't real, but we're also more than this. And it's like so many writers like you can't envision us without some white boot on our necks.
Do you get angry at Bret Easton Ellis or Charles Bukowski for writing about the downtrodden? Or is your ire strictly reserved for black women?
Nobody reads Bukowski thinking his is the definitive white experience, but white people read your book and confine us to it. They think that we're all like that.
Then it sounds like your issue is with white people, Monk, not me.
Well, maybe, but I also think that I see the unrealized potential of black people in this country.
Potential is what people see when they think what's in front of them isn't good enough.
And so I thought it was a really great scene to have those sort of two, how do you tell stories that need to be told because people aren't listening to people on the lower side of society's awareness, and also not paint that as
the experience,
so that you assume every black person came from that.
Right.
Okay, you're wealthy now, but you must have whatever, which happens so often. And it's one of those things that the movie doesn't, there's no real way to land on that. And I think that might be part of what the multiple endings thing is. Because even Monk doesn't really know how to end it.
It'll be interesting to see kind of what he does next, because I feel like this movie in a way is sort of, this movie can work like a thesis where it's sort of like, I want to do more with black stories.
Sure.
And Monk is a great lens of a character to say, this is where the frustrations lie with the limitations of what you can do with the black stories and black experience in the book industry and in the film industry. And like we talked about already, like by having the movie in itself present an alternative story.
Right.
And one that, black or not, that particular story is not told very often. The story of someone at that age, which is more around 40 to 50, that is getting to the age where they have to seriously talk about being caretakers to their own parents and also have very different relationships with their own siblings at that age. It's even just age-wise, it's not a story that you tend to see told a whole lot. And so for him to be able to make it a black experience, but also say, like, there are just a lot more stories to tell.
Yeah. It feels like the movie's better than 3 stars, just personally.
Okay.
But I get what you're saying, definitely. Like, this is not as abrasive a movie as the book was.
It doesn't feel fearless in the way that the book does. Pulling some punches. To me, it's a little bit hypocritical to do that with this movie.
Sure.
Because to take a movie that's tackling this particular subject matter and soften its edges for palatability feels to me like you are committing the sin that you're trying to indict.
So, yeah.
You're kind of creating a movie that you think could be Oscar bait. And that's so much of what this movie's critiquing is this idea of, like, we've got to pander to certain audiences. Well, I get that you're calling that out as a problem, but you're adapting it from a source material that honestly did not give a shit who it was pandering to.
Not at all. Right.
Like, you're showing your cards a little bit that you sort of do. Like, you sort of do care a little bit about who's going to be able to take this, who's going to swallow this, who's going to, because you're taking the stuff that was so edgy and really kind of removing it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'll put it this way. I don't get that sense of holding back from Boots Riley.
No, right. Oh, gosh.
Now, I thought about this. I'm like, can you imagine the same adaptation in the hands of Boots Riley?
Yeah.
That guy's not going to hold back anything. And it's probably going to be a more interesting movie for it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. And probably not Oscar nominated.
And but like, I would rather.
I feel like that's a great comparison.
But are we doing a bad thing by comparing two black filmmakers against each other? But they are doing similar things. And Boots Riley definitely is making movies that are pushing you to say, I'm going to make a black movie that is really going to get you to think.
Yeah.
Does Cord Jefferson want this movie to be too likable, I guess?
Right. And I hesitate using these words because they're so often used about black people in terrible, terrible ways, but I mean these words as compliments as best as I can. Sorry to bother you. Erasure, The Trees feel dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
They feel scary.
Yes.
There is a truth they are telling.
It's like Do the Right Thing, even. Like, it's dangerous because it's unflinching in the truth it wants to tell.
Right. And you get that sense from Monk in the book. Like I have nothing left to lose. I do not care anymore. Whereas the monk in the movie is just sort of tired of it all.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anything about American fiction that is dangerous. And even the title change, I kind of wonder.
Yeah. What do you think is the point of that?
I really don't know.
So there's a couple things with wordplay going on there. It's American fiction as in, like, the genre of American fiction.
Right, and the state of being a fiction writer in America.
And then there's the American
fiction of We Lives in the Ghetto and My Pathology being the story of black people. Like, I think that works.
And that that itself is a fiction that we tell ourselves almost.
Which, though, is a cleaned up, sanitized version of Erasure. Like, people are being erased by this. Just that title change is a softening.
Could it be that there was already a movie called Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
And people didn't want to get too confused.
You're absolutely, I think, identifying it. And here I go, making it about race.
No, kidding aside, I think your point is well taken. That I don't really understand why I don't get the name change either.
I don't know. And I don't know what to think about the fact that I liked the movie and I felt like when I finished it was good. And now that I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that movie wasn't everything it could be. So like, can I enjoy the movie and say like, the book though, what could have been, the movie that could have been?
I feel like I'm doing what I didn't want to do, which is comparing the book too much to the movie.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm trying to do that is because I feel like the changes that the movie made from the book only seem to kind of highlight to me that the movie wasn't willing to tackle the subject it thinks it wants to tackle to the degree that it should have, to make a movie that I think would have been more lasting. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, because I did enjoy it. I found it funny. The acting is so good. But is this the kind of movie that is going to last beyond 2023?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not in the same way that a lot of the other movies we've talked about have. I think it's going to be one of those movies that's going to kind of come and go.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to be that way, because it's an awesome Percival Everett book.
Yeah.
You know, I think that I could read that book and be like, boy, that book's going to really stick with me for forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because it made me sit through 10 chapters of my pathology.
Yeah, right.
I've never seen a book do that before.
Right.
You know? It pushed me into uncomfortable places.
Right.
I never felt uncomfortable watching this movie.
No.
Did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so one thing we could talk about is what place does this movie have in the conversation on race? And I do think it has a valuable point to make that we did have in 2020, especially, sort of a big rise in white people wanting to be more racially conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think this movie, at least the freshness that it provides, is a little bit of a critique to all of those white people that read the books in 2020.
Yep.
And okay, so you read some books on race, you watched some films, you caught up on some stuff.
You want to elevate black voices or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Intellectually doing that and ignoring the very people who are right in front of them, which is exactly what happens in the movie.
Right, yeah.
So is that a valuable point to be made?
Sure.
Absolutely. I just think that that's something that a lot of those same white people who did read those books and have paid attention to that, those are the same people who are going to watch this movie and kind of laugh at those people and be like, well, I'm not them.
Yeah.
And not think about the subtle ways that maybe they are.
Yeah.
I think it's fuck for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I agree.
I disagree. I'm sorry.
I think it would be a mistake to award this book anything.
Well, it's 2 versus 3, so fuck's the winner.
Is the winner. You know, it's not just that it's so affecting. I just think it's essential to listen to black voices right now.
I don't know. For me, the cumulative effect of the whole movie was just, oh, okay. Yeah, that's...
I can see that.
That's that. I saw American Fiction.
No, I agree with you. It's a movie that exists with great performances and some really funny,
some good moments, some really good moments,
really great moments. Yeah, I guess I would knock mine back to maybe 3.5.
Well, you don't have to. I mean,
no,
you liked it.
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't feel coerced. I just you're bringing up things that I think I had overlooked.
Well, I mean, aside from you just kind of listing out what you liked, like, were there parts of the movie that you just found like really effective?
I guess I thought that the family story worked, even without the complexity of a lot of what's happening in the novel, which I think I've forgotten a lot of. And I don't want you to feel like you ruined the movie for me or anything, but I just think that the movie feels good enough to not think about those things. But then afterwards, it's like, oh yeah, that could have been different. But, you know, I think we always say we don't want to do that either, like judge a movie that wasn't.
Yeah.
But,
now, I have to say, I had a similar feeling with The Good Place.
Oh, interesting.
While I was watching it, I was like, yes, the show's amazing. And I watched the whole thing and it ended. And now going back, I'm like, is that a show that I'm terribly excited to go rewatch? And I don't know. I don't think about it that much, really.
Yeah.
Because it was another show that was sort of like really high concept, but palatable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to say that's like a hallmark of
Cord
sounds
Jefferson.
really cruel to say that. I think there's a place for writers out there that can sort of take something that can have mass appeal and introduce concepts that a lot of those masses have never really thought about much or don't really see as entertainment, but it's like, wow, I am being entertained by thinking about these high concept things.
Yeah.
That's a skill in itself. So I don't necessarily mean to knock it.
Yeah.
But I find that art doesn't always have a long shelf life. I'll put it that way.
Sure. Yeah, that's probably true. And also we happen to have the comparison of Percival Everett, who did make those things palatable. It's not a slog, but it is hard. I don't know. I feel like we're kind of spinning our wheels here.
Yeah.
That overall,
All right,
if you like this movie, go ahead and like this movie.
Yeah.
But read Percival Everett too.
Exactly. Okay, so how are we feeling here? Are we how's your star rating feeling here?
I mean, I think it's probably like 3.5.
Okay.
I would tell people to see it, but I would be interested to hear what they had to say.
I would actually tell people I think it's worth seeing, but I am going to probably keep mine at a 3. Didn't quite have that lasting impression on me.
Yeah.
But will you be bored with it? No. It's funny. I'm sure there's going to be times where I think back on a joke from it and think, that's a pretty funny movie.
I think the thing I laughed at the most was when they are scattering Lisa's ashes.
That part was so great.
And it was just, I mean, you see, first off, you see this white man walking in the background. I was like, oh, is he just going to walk through? But then he asks if they have a permit. And then, like, his name being Philip is just perfect. The way Sterling K. Brown says his name the first time, and then just kind of quietly in the background, Monk just going, "Get the fuck out of here, Philip."
That was a great scene. I also just love the single line that was just, the dumber I behave, the richer I get.
Yeah.
There's some great moments in this movie. So maybe I was a little too hard on it, but it's worth seeing.
Yeah.
Well, are we, do we have kind of a mutual understanding
I think a
here?
mutual understanding is a fair assessment.
Yes. Yeah. That sounds good to me. I was glad to catch up with it still. And
me too.
Kind of check that box off as far as movies from 2023.
Yeah.
Well, then how about we maybe talk about what box we're going to check off in our next episode?
Yeah. Well, without going too far into it, we're changing up our schedule a little bit again. We are going to be doing an episode for every 2 months, sort of. So this will be our July-August episode. We're going to put out then a September-October episode. So that puts us into
Spooktacular.
The holiday Spooktacular is going to be what we're looking at next.
So really, lest you worry, this schedule does not remove the Spooktacular.
No.
If anything, it gives us more time
to really
put into it.
To really dedicate the
reason for the season.
The reason for the season. We'll be tizzing the season for a good 4 months now.
I mean,
3 months.
It's July and we're prepping for it already.
Yeah, they already have Halloween decorations at Costco. So
do they really?
Mm-hmm. So we're on Costco's calendar now.
It works for them. It's gonna work for us.
Yeah. So we're picking a scary movie and we're looking back to 2023. And
we're doing the Monster Mash.
We're doing the Monster Mash. That's right. Another Oscar winner.
Yeah.
This one, kind of a surprise Oscar nomination and
I was
win.
Happy for it,
I was happy for it too. Coming,
it's like the little engine that could. I felt like this movie
a little
was.
bit, yeah. Which is what a lot of people say about Godzilla. Which tells you we're doing Godzilla -1.
Oh yes, this is gonna be fun.
We've both seen it. We both enjoyed it.
We want to
rewatch it. Certainly not as scary as some of the stuff we could be watching,
right.
But we haven't done a monster movie. I don't think.
Well,
I mean, what do we have? 10 or 11 Spooktaculars in,
right?
And we haven't done a monster movie.
What's wrong with us?
I guess the Babadook could count, but it's not the same sort of thing.
Like
That's
not the same thing. Yeah.
I'm excited to see it again. If you haven't seen it or have seen it, go ahead and watch it with us.
Please do. You're going to have a good time, I think. I hope so, at least. And if you don't, we should hear from you.
Yeah, because you're the only one. Pretty universally praised, this Godzilla.
But I'd like to take that only one and make it -1 after our conversation.
Yeah. That's an excellent goal and great wordplay.
It's math play.
Math play.
So, you know, I don't know. Do we need to go? I mean, I feel like some people might say, "What's with the schedule change?"
Oh, well, we can talk about it.
I don't know. I feel like it's just one of those things where we just need it.
Yeah, we do. We might have a lot more to say about what our podcast is or is going to become, but right now we just Nate bears a lot of the workload on this podcast by editing everyone, and he also is busy. He's got a family.
Yeah. Well,
and
you're busy too.
We're
You've
both
got a family
busy,
too,
but,
and this is a labor of love. We do
yeah.
love doing this. I don't want people to think we don't.
And
I mean, this is great.
I think cutting back is how we maybe keep loving it.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
it
so
makes it
that
manageable
it doesn't
for
become
us.
such a slog. So we're taking care of ourselves a little bit here.
Exactly.
But we're not forgetting about you.
No, we need you.
You know.
Please don't stop listening.
Yeah.
But our theory is that early on, or not even early on, I feel like there was a lot of talk in podcasting about how you gotta be regular, you gotta keep it out, or you're gonna lose your listeners.
Yeah.
And I don't know, anecdotally for us and just experientially from our perspective, it's like that's not how I listen to podcasts. I find podcasts I like, and when they drop a new episode, my app lets me know, and I stick around and listen to it.
Yeah, it just seems like the way people kind of listen to us is, have they seen that movie? Then they'll check in, or maybe they'll let a couple episodes pile up and listen to a few. So we're not leaving. We're just
making it more manageable for us.
Yeah. We've also got some thoughts about like other things we can do while we're taking those 2-month breaks. So we'll see. When you need to know, we'll let you know.
You're on a need-to-know basis.
But we still love hearing your thoughts on our episodes. And we got several ways for you to
absolutely
do that.
And we really would love to hear not only your thoughts on our other episodes, but really, honestly, like, are there movies that you think you'd wish we would talk about at some point? Because we could always use some suggestions. So please let us know. You can let us know a couple different ways to listen to or comment on this or any of our past episodes. You can find us at canwestillbefriends.net. That's our website. Or email us at feedback@canwestillbefriends.net. You can find us on Facebook at Can We Still Be Friends Podcast, or Instagram and Threads at Can We Still Be Friends Pod. Lately, I've just been putting up my Letterboxd reviews on there, so follow along with what I've been watching. If you'd like to leave us a voice memo and possibly be featured on the podcast, you can call us at 847-306-9532 or email us a voice memo. I will also add that you could text that number.
Yeah.
That number does accept text messages. It's just a Google Voice account. So
if you're younger than 60 and you like, don't like talking on the phone.
What people, why? I don't want to talk.
Go ahead and text
I don't want to talk on the
us.
phone. I don't want to leave a voicemail. I don't want people to hear my voice. Yeah. Maybe we don't need to hear your voice.
Yeah. Or you can just text us, hey, you should do this movie. And then that's it. That's where we leave it.
Just text us the name of a movie.
Sure.
You don't even give us your name. Just, Frost vs. Nixon.
Okay. Frost Nixon. Sure.
Frost Nixon.
I mean, we'll get it. If you send us Frost vs. Nixon, we'll figure you probably meant Frost Nixon.
Frost/Nixon? Is that what it is? Or is it just...
I think so.
It's 2 words.
I think it's just Frost Nixon, but I think there's a slash between them. As always, we'd love it if you could subscribe and leave us a rating or a review at Apple Podcasts or any of the podcasting places that allow you to rate or review. And those ratings really help spread the word about our show. Can We Still Be Friends is written and produced by Ryan Ebling and Nate Goss and edited by Nate Goss. Thanks for listening.
And we'll catch you next time. Want this movie to be too likable, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.